press conference. All right, we need to get a hold of Deborah. Missing Deborah. Deborah.
She was right here. Maybe someone sent her on a mission.
Okay, just wait a couple seconds for our staff person to so we capture everything. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is our third and final budget deliberation, at least formally. I'm sure there'll be some other budget deliberation going on between now and the time we accept this package. But so I just want to thank everybody and again thank the staff for the hard work that we have them do. I think it's a good part of the process to get those questions in ahead of time. There's nothing worse than trying to dissect an entire budget over an hour-and-a-half meeting. So, and I think what it does, it just gives an opportunity to get more specific kinds of questions, and you can get a sense of what the specific kinds of concerns are. This is by no means an easy part of what we do. The amount of resources are always finite. The amount of need is infinite. But our responsibility is to go through and try and prioritize as best we can, given what our principles are in this district, and that is that we try and use every single amount of resource, every single penny we can to keep the classrooms whole, to keep our children whole in terms of the resources they need to be successful in school. And along the way, we have to make difficult decisions. I got to tell you, the decisions that we as a board have to make have gotten a little easier than they were almost, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when Linda and Lauren, I don't know if you know this, but at one point in time, about 6 years ago, we're looking at an $86 million deficit. So we've gone from 86 to now 14, 17. So we've done better. But then again, it still does create some challenges for us as a board and the staff to do the things that we have to do. That said, I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. And so we'll go through, and we've gotten a number of responses back. We are going to go through the last third of the book. We've done the profiles in the schools last time, and so now we're going to go into some of the programs. So I'll turn it over to you, Lauren, and
thank you. Yes, it's quite the challenge, and certainly I can't imagine facing $86 million, so this is not fun, but certainly a little bit easier. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have as an urban district is the uncertainty of it all. And as you'll see as we go through, this is almost a minute-by-minute changing budget because we're still getting updated with news and information. So anyway, we'll bring you up to speed from where we were a couple of weeks ago. Everton? We are bringing you a balanced budget, and we are pleased that, we've been able to close an $18 million gap, and we've been able to accomplish almost all of the key objectives that the board had set initially. Say almost because it's not 100%. But we are able to keep programs fairly much intact, not 100% intact as we go through the discussion. We will continue support for the receivership schools. We do have additional supports in for the social emotional needs. I say minimal staff reductions. It's not really minimal when it affects the people who are on the other side of that, but overall, compared to hundreds of jobs being cut, it's not as large of an impact. And realistic revenue and expense projections, which, as we get into the slides, we'll be talking about some of the uncertainties. Go ahead. So we started initially with a $40 million gap back in January. We made the adjustments to apply fund balance. We cut expenses, and we cut out the contingency. The last time we met, in March, we were looking at a $24 million budget gap. And then we had the governor's budget came through with an additional $7 million, and we also had to add back some of the initial cuts for the summer learning program, so that our budget gap when we last met on April 12th was $18.3 million. We had put some ideas up as to where we thought we would be needing to add to the program, and we've lined that up with the actual increases that we've included in our current budget proposal. We are looking at increasing the curriculum development for the K-2. We did have a substantial amount of money in the original draft proposal. We are increasing that by $270,000 in the current proposal, and that will cover what we need to have the 5 teachers on assignment and $200,000 towards a contract to help support that program. The big picture, we were anticipating having to spend $600,000. We actually shifted resources from between departments so that we're able to put the program in with an increase of approximately $78,000. In this case, rounded up to. Oh, absolutely.
That, however, came with a loss of 6 instructional coaches that were repurposed in order to be able to start the big picture. So it's not without a loss. So Dr. Otua and Dr. Gerlius, we talked all about it and agreed that to get it started, that would be better than having to wait. So it does come with a negative.
Yes. The help rooms, we were able to put in, we originally thinking in the $600,000 range, that ended up in the about $715,000, and I'll let Linda speak to that.
I know Christiana, I can't see Christiana, so I don't know when she's going to talk
She's
than
at the
I
end.
am, but it doesn't matter. There are, what we have placed in the budget for that $715 million is our 13 additional help rooms, which then which would then provide a help room to every school that has grades 7 through 12. So if it's just a K-6 building without 7th and 8th grades, at this point, it is not in the budget, but the 13 additional help rooms that we have displayed here would then be added to those that are already funded by other means. So it's not 13 total, it's 13 new. Christiana, would you like to speak to that?
What did you ask? What is the help room? Oh, the help room. The help room is a room where students, when they are acting up, we give them a chance to come down and talk with the teacher or somebody that we employ in there, that they have a chance to debrief, get themselves together and go back into classroom. It's not supposed to be a suspension place.
All set? Okay. We were hoping to put in the second step curriculum pilot and some monies for the APPR external evaluation. Both of those together would have been another $1 million. At this point in time, they're not in the budget, but did you want to speak to the evaluations?
I will, and perhaps Adele would like to as well, but we still have to enter into 3012D negotiations, which are beginning, and we're uncertain as to what options we might have for next year related to state testing. We're hoping maybe to have some options that don't exist now that would be a decrease in that budget line, so that then whatever we need to devote to the external evaluation piece, depending on where that ends up and who's doing them, we hope it would be a balance. So it's too early to really make a prediction, but that's our thinking.
Any other?
I have been in very consistent conversations with the state about the choices and the flexibility that they would like to see with 3012D, because I've been working at that level for many years now. So I've been briefing Linda on what those conversations have been like, and they are intensifying because districts really do need some relief. in order to be able to implement this 3012D. So we took away the link of testing to teacher evaluation and principal evaluation, but we left many requirements that are very restrictive for districts. So we've been in really strong conversations with the Big Five and with all of the districts around the state trying to introduce flexibilities, which then could allow to meet the requirements by shifting some resources and not have to add resources to an already tight budget.
Good, okay. The last item there, we may be sending, matching staff, I'm sorry, I missed one. After the last budget was proposed, again, we have a continuous process of reevaluating the enrollments and the student placements and lots of individual changes, which amounted to probably another $200,000 in that range for additional staff. But again, that's a multitude of plus 0.1s and minus 0.2s and shifting of based on course requirements throughout the schools and the special needs placements, and that's about it. Any questions on that? No. Okay. Was that a question? No. Okay. And then the EPO has 47 students interested in going to BOCES. We already send 15 to BOCES at this point in time. So we set aside, but there are some that hopefully will go or find programs that they like that won't cost tuition, but to REOC. But if they don't, we've built in another $200,000 for additional BOCES classes over and above what we already had budgeted.
I have a question on that. So is this out of the money that the EOP already has, where we're not spending additional district dollars, but that have already been allocated to the school? Because you all have a ton of money, and for me to see this increase, I do have an issue with it. Even the receivership fund, you all got $11 million addition to what the district had budgeted in its last budget cycle. So I'm concerned that you all are spending additional money when the URVAR came in and said this is going to cost a lot, but I didn't think it was going to be additional dollars. And I guess this is not something that I'm willing to support because East High School, the EPO, has a tremendous amount of dollars. And it would seem to me that within that funding that East currently has, is somewhere you all can come up with $0.2 million. We're not even talking about a whole million, but $200,000 should be able to, you should be able to find it somewhere within the $11 million that you were assigned, as well as the additional funding that East High School got. So I'm a little concerned about that we're being asked to approve that.
All right, so point of clarification. We have the additional BOCES is actually part of the timeout school. So East was a timeout school before the EPO, and under that legislation, the schools are required to allow students to attend technical programs for schools that are in good standings. And currently in the RCSD, there are no schools in good standing, so East students could not attend there. There's one program offered at the REOC, which is the Pathways program. That's the one for firefighters, police, EMT, I think I'm missing one. In that program, if students want to attend, they could also. But this is part of actually the funding prior to the EPO, where students were required, or we are required to offer them CTE courses in an approved program. And BOCES is the only one in the area that allows that. And we've been in contact with the folks here to explain that. As far as the additional funds, those funds are part of receivership dollars that we give back to the district. We will give far more than $200,000 back this year to the district to use as they choose. So it may be an additional item on the screen, but it's far less than the money that we'll be giving back to the district. All right,
that sounds good. I'm pleased about that. What are the programs, though, that BOCES are offering that our students may participate in?
Most of our students participate in welding, some do cosmetology, manufacturing in terms of fabrication. There's a criminal justice element to it. So there's probably 40 different programs that BOCES offers. Again, if our students have an interest in police, firefighter, EMT, or 911 call center, we're going to push them towards the district-based program. That's the only program in the district that they can attend. That's in good standing. Once Edison becomes a school in good standing, we'll try to funnel kids through that program as well. But currently, BOCES is our only option.
All right, thank you.
And just a number of kids. There were 22 this year, and there'll be 25 juniors next year, so 47 total.
I have a quick question, follow up on that. How long is the timeout status last?
I believe it's at least the next 5 years, isn't it?
Well, it's really, out of time is a determination.
Right.
There was a point at which, for schools across the state, that just said they had had enough years on SIGs, et cetera. It's the same, essentially the same schools that are persistently struggling now. But the state just said, you're out of time. You've either got to close or do something different. And the do something different here was to establish the EPO.
And so the minimum of 5 years applies to that. So hopefully by the time the EPO is done, within a minimum of 5 years, out of time status would be removed.
Okay. All right. Well, we've been working diligently going through everything we can. So we had a couple of proposals of where we were looking to reduce some of the expenses, and we've been able to do that successfully in some of those areas and some additional areas. So what we've done is we looked at the agency temp service, and we looked at the overall usage, and in conjunction with the efforts to fill vacancies this year, we're taking $1 million off the initial proposed budget for agency temps. Also for teachers, because now we have a concerted effort to fill those vacancies and not have as many subs in the buildings. So therefore we can, with a little more confidence now, go ahead and cut back on those lines. It's going to take some work, of course, across the district to maintain controls on some of these things, but we're willing to do that. We are working on the professional and technical services. I didn't put a dollar figure up there because we're still going through the contracts, and this isn't the end of the budget. Even though it's balanced at this point in time, it's going to be continuously changing. So we're going to continue to go through and complete review of the professional and technical services. There have been a few at this point that we've identified, but not complete enough for me to put a number up there as yet as to what we're going to be saving. We did look at the transportation costs, and we do have savings with the negotiated transportation contracts for next year. The scheduling of schools on a consistent basis allowed us to reduce those contract costs. We've got good news in terms of the FMP, where we were not allowed in prior years to take the administrative costs against the project, and we had budgeted $400,000 to cover the administrative costs. They did finally come through with a legal opinion saying that we were allowed to cover that under the FMP, so we're able to transfer those out to the bonding, which is a nice savings. We're also taking a close look at the ELT, the per student allocations, and also the lower cost of teachers going to a 7.5-hour day. So those consistencies, we're hoping to save actually slightly over $2 million. And then we looked at the 6th grade classrooms, and I'll let Lynn, you want to speak to the 6th grade classrooms?
Or Christiana, maybe.
Or Christiana?
There were some 6th grade classrooms that are not up to par. They are not 26. There may be 30 or 32 in the classroom. And in order to have a classroom, we need 26 in them. So there are 5 of them that we were able to trim. The principals, I talked to them, they were okay with it, and they do not seem upset about it at all.
Do you mean consolidating 6th grades within a building? Because we do have a promise to families that once their children are placed in an elementary school, they're able to stay there to the terminal grade.
Okay.
So you're not talking about requiring parents relocate their children to another
No,
elementary school?
no.
Okay.
In many cases, those students, usually there are transfers during this, at the end of the year, before the beginning of the new year. So what we would do is stop the kids from coming in. It was 2 or 3 per grade level. It was not keeping the class open for that number of kids.
Okay.
I'm afraid I'm not understanding what you just told us.
So what happens is we have 26 students in K6, right? So in 6th grade, if they are more than 26 kids, you have to open up a new classroom, or at that time give them a para, right? So in these classrooms that we close, there are maybe 28, 29. So we know that those students are they're not coming in, but there will be some students leaving the school. I talked to the principals, and the principals agree with me that there are some students leaving the school that may not come back. So what we will do is hold those spaces. When they reach 26, we will not add any more students to them.
And why is this a 6th grade issue in particular?
It was looking for a way for us to be able to balance our budget and do what we need to do. We looked at 6th grade because in our 6th grade there were classes that I have not looked at before that were very, very low, like 27 or 28, and it's divided into 2 teachers. So we looked at 6th grade and we made a copy of the schedule for all our 6th graders, and we went after the ones that are very low and talked to them about moving those teachers, and the principals were not upset at all with me.
Is there any reason we can't be reaching into the 5th and the 4th grades to do the same thing?
I don't know about
It's
that part.
It's not the case there. There's an historical trend here of students, some larger groups of students leaving at the end of 6th grade to go to charter, parochial, whatever, moving. So it's typical at this time of year, I've been told, to have those low numbers. So we just looked at those classes that have, as Christiana said, maybe 27, 28 students right now in a section. So rather than have 2 teachers assigned to that school, we figured, with summer transfers and students leaving, we would just make sure that we didn't allow students to come in to those schools at large rates, but that we would make sure we'd balance it out over the summer. It allowed us to save $400,000 by doing that.
So you're talking about alternatives, whether it be suburban or charter schools that start at the 6th grade. That's where we're having the migration out. You mean 6 go 7? Or because our suburban neighbors still have middle schools, so 5 go 6.
Our loss is 6 go 7.
Got it.
Okay. And last but not least, in central office and administrative cost reductions, we've gone through every department. Initially, in the first draft budget, there was nearly $900,000 in cuts in the central office positions. This is an additional $900,000 in central office positions, so we've cut nearly $2 million from that area. And those reductions total $8.8 million. So where we were with a gap, $18.3 million, we did add some programming in, and we just showed you the $8.8 million in reductions. I'm going to let Linda talk about state aid revenue and her up to the minute.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
The prior slide
Oh, sure.
regarding central office
Yep.
and administrative cost reductions, how much of that nearly $2 million was in positions versus other costs, other expenses?
Those are positions.
The 0.9 plus
The
0.9
0.9,
is 100%
those are
salary.
positions. Those are salaries. Yes. Some were vacant that we took off the books. They weren't all filled positions, but they are all positions.
Okay, and are those adjustments visible to us, position by position?
We do have it. Everton has a list, and we can distribute that. Absolutely. Go ahead. You want to speak to state aid?
Sure. Well, it's not really state aid, but you all know in the budget that final allocation, there is a $75 million allocation that's focused on to be dedicated to community/receivership schools. And I have been dogging Dr. Atkinson every day saying, what do you know, what do you know, what do you know, what can we count on? And I just got a phone call, like just before we started. She had been in a meeting today, and she said that although I don't have any details yet, she said that just from that community schools, receivership school age, her thinking is that we can count on conservatively about $10 million of that 70. She said of the $75 million allocation for community/receivership schools, she said she feels it's safe for us to count on about $10 million. Now that is, the SIG-7 is another source of funds, and all of our new priority schools that have not had a SIG in the past will be able to apply for those funds, and she just told me that the amount will be $500,000 for 5 consecutive years. So that's another source of funds that we had, 17 new priority schools. I'm not certain which ones may have had SIGs in the past, but even at that's a highly conservative estimate for anticipated revenue from both the community receivership $75 million allocation and the ability for us to apply for the school improvement grants for all the schools at $500,000 apiece, which could yield us about $8 million if we take, if all the schools were successful. So it's 2 sources of funds. Our $7 million, estimate to close our gap, I believe, is very conservative.
And we also need to get the details on any restrictions that may be attached to those funds. We can't just necessarily take the money and replace what we already have. So until that happens, we'll keep you up to date in terms of whatever information comes through.
However, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. The good thing is some of the things that we have not been able to put in this budget related to social emotional supports and additional staffing at schools that are in the new priority schools who will vie for the SIGs. Some of those supports will be able to be placed in those budgets, so it will be a support to what we've been able to place in this budget.
This question is in relation to the fund balance. How much funding do we have remaining in the fund balance?
Well, I'm glad you asked, and I'm not putting that up without a plan, just so you know. I know it's been a discussion, and it's been a tough, and it's hard for me to give up more. However, we have about $20 million now. I had been estimating about $5 million coming in to replenish that fund. A couple decisions had to be made. One had to do with the cash capital piece with the city, and also there are a couple other pieces that have come into play over the last month or so. And thankfully to the EPO, Sean mentioned some of the money he's giving back. He's giving up $1.2 million, I think was the number, in terms of what he's not going to spend this year, so that helps us. We also have premiums on a bond sale that we had this year that generated a little windfall for us in $2.6 million. Plus we have some liabilities on the books that we can clean off that we were holding funds aside. So with those combinations coming in, we're probably looking to closer to $10 million being replenished. Of course, got to be careful because those are one-shots. The premium on the bond sale is not a recurring revenue stream. Neither is the liability write-off a revenue stream. So they're one-shots to get us through. So that would then bring, if we were able to make that $9 or $10 million mark, would bring us up to about $29 million. We had started with an application of 5.8. We add, it was 5.8, 5 million. We added another 5 to bring us up, or no, I'm sorry, it was 5.8. It was almost 6. Then we add another 5 million, bring us up to 11. This would bring us up to 15 in total. If we replenish 10, we would be basically saying, okay, we might end up using 4 million in fund balance. However, the good news is if we do get the funding and we do arrange things properly, we still have other moves We're still looking at the grants in terms of making sure that we're drawing out everything we can without having anything roll over that we can't use right now, to make sure that we keep that fund balance. So even though we're applying a little bit more, I think we're going to be getting most of it, this piece back and more back.
Yeah, I'm a real proponent of
Yes.
a strong fund balance.
Yes,
because we
I
never
agree.
know what's going to happen throughout the year. And we
Absolutely.
need to be safe with a strong fund balance.
Yes, I was a little nervous, but I'm more confident in recouping that now that I know that we have those other pieces falling into place for this year. It doesn't, and if we do everything right and we hold the reins on the expenses this year, we should be in good shape going into next year.
Going off the fund balance question, in terms of contingency, have we set aside anything for contingency within this budget?
Not in a contingency line per se. We've conservatively estimated some of our expenses, so we have little bits along the line. But no, we have not budgeted. We took that out when we first had the $40 million gap.
You took out the contingency fund.
We took out the $5 million in contingency, yes. So yes, we have to do a lot of very close monitoring this year, and we're hoping to put in some processes that will allow us to monitor that a lot better and tighter. We have to do that. And if something happens, then we may end up having to make mid-year reductions.
And I think, but that's why I think the projections are even more important this year than they were in previous years, being that, there's not really that contingency line outlined, and because that means that we would have to go into.
I think Everton can speak to the truth that we've been looking at this year a lot closer than we have.
You're speaking in terms of this financial year or next year?
Yes, this year.
Yeah, this year.
As we close out?
Right.
Yeah, as we close out, what we're doing, we're making sure that all the lines that we have and every funding that we have, that as we project so tight that not even breeze can pass through. So we are looking at all the salaries lines. Breeze. So we are looking at all the salary lines. I mean, we're going through every single line in the budget and looking at those, so we make sure that we have everything covered. So that's why we're able to see what we're going to end up with in the fund balance. And that's why we know these items that we're looking at. Some of them we have not brought to the board as yet, but because we're reviewing them so tightly, we want to make sure we have everything aligned. So in what Lauren just mentioned, we have scrubbed them, we have looked at them, and when we get the next budget amendment, you will see those amendments going through to reflect what we just spoke about.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this piece? Okay. So this is what we did. We looked at central office, and we made a significant number of reductions. We are still looking and continue to talk about the LT budgets for next year in terms of the standard work hours and the contracts that are there and what services are going to be provided. We did look at current vacancies, and we're going to continue to look at vacancies. Not everything is going to get filled. We're certainly going to streamline some of the process in terms of making sure that the vacancies in the schools are filled more quickly, to speeding up the process so we have teachers in the classrooms as quickly as we can, when there's a turnover. But any other non-essential positions are still going to go through a stringent process of examination to make sure that they need to be replaced and there isn't something else that we can do. We're still going to look at the transportation costs, but we haven't done anything at this point that we can bring to the table in terms of the 1.5 mile restriction. That's going to be a continued discussion. We did consolidate the 6th grade classes, as we spoke about. We are reducing vendor contracts, but that's still under process and under review. We're collecting information, we're verifying information, and necessity. We did shift resources to support the initiatives, including the 6 instructional coach positions that were repurposed for the big picture. And again, we're continuing to make sure that we spend the grant dollars so that we're not sending anything back and we're not underspending. So for schools in the 16-17 budget, we're staffed to enrollment across the board. All of our special education needs are staffed at this point, are projected, I should say. Special education needs are staffed at this point in time. We added 3 teaching positions to implement the restorative practices. We added 5 teaching positions to support the K-2 curriculum initiative. We added 13 help zones. We maintained all of the art, music, sports, and extracurricular activities that you had put into place already. That's huge. They're getting the equipment, they're getting the musical instruments. We're using the cash capital now to make sure that those items are sustained. And unfortunately, we did have to displace 5.5 instructional coaches. So looking forward to May 10th is the budget, and certainly any questions.
I just want to make a statement. I was unable to attend the previous budget deliberations, but I just want to say that I know, and I know Commissioner Chairman Cruz will thank the team, but I know this was difficult to do. And as you said, Madam Superintendent, you know, it keeps you up at night. I'm sure it's kept Linda and Everton and others up at night. And I want to thank you for the work on this, because I know it had to be difficult. But I think we're at the point in this community, and even maybe on the state level, where people are saying, you know, we've given you money. So now how do we begin to manage more efficiently the dollars that we have? I think part of the issue with resistance to bonding from the city has to do with, you know, we just did this facilities modernization project on Charlotte High School, and now it's closing. So, you know, people see that, you know, we tend to get this funding, but, you know, student achievement is still at an all-time low. And so I think I'm hoping that people within this district are being cognizant of the fact that people are resistant about giving us money, because they see that money is not the issue. And now I've been here 11 years, and I've been saying that the whole time. And so it's something else. And so hopefully now, when people tend to have limited resources, they get creative. And so I'm hoping that people see. And then the other thing, in the years that I've been here, you had people around here who felt entitled, now that they should have a job. Now, they talk about welfare recipients feeling entitled, but I don't know any other organization where the employees here feel that they're entitled to their job and then not getting the results. And so it seems like there may be a different kind of a culture in the air that they're recognized, because I don't hear anybody really coming to us and really beating down the doors and saying, you got to keep this, you got to keep that, as a, you know, maybe 1 or 2 programs, but it's not, you know, what we've seen in the past. And so I'm hoping that people are really understanding that we have finite resources and then are willing to work within those finite resources and become creative in doing the work. And so I really am, this may sound weird, but I really am excited about this budget and about the way in which, you know, you and your team have been able to pull this budget together. Resources are limited, and we've got to work within those means. I'm still tickled, and probably will remember Evidence comment about, you know, breeze can't get through here. So, you know, hopefully, you know, we'll be able to now really understand the resources are limited, and now we got to get to work. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Why don't we just go right down the line and see if there's any additional questions? It started with Malik.
No, just let me say thank you. I mean, you know, and you know, I know we've been lobbied by folks who have wanted this in or that in, but one of the things that people have to understand is that as a board member, one of your most important things that you have to do in a budget is a fiduciary responsibility. So I know, for example, I use OASIS as an example. I know they've been sending us emails. I love the OASIS program, and I know that they want us to be able to, you know, do everything that we're doing over there. But I think it's important for people to remember, particularly with grants, people forget that the district in the past has supplemented grants when they went away, or if we thought something was great, we would continue to fund it. And it's unfortunate that we can't do that. I mean, I hope that we can try to find other ways, other grants to supplement things when they go away. But I think the other thing that we can do too, and I'm advocating this, that we look at this going forward as we look at our budget stuff. If there are other entities in the community that are doing things that the district is doing that are duplicative, we need to get rid of it and let them do it. I'll give you a prime example. REOC has some great programs that we may do here. We should be, from a collective impact standpoint, we should be working with REOC, or those other adult providers that are doing better, that are doing things better than we are, and working with them to do it, to take some of our population folks, some of our population to do those things. I think the more we can do that, the better. There's certain things that I just don't think the school district should be in the business of doing. And then there's things that I think that we should be able to do. So overall, this was an extremely difficult budget year, but I think that it's important to understand that when we send our numbers to City Council, they have to be balanced, and that we have to use a scalpel and not an axe. And I think we've seen that evidence throughout the entire budget deliberations. We just didn't cut 700 people in panic. We really took a scalpel to the budget. The other thing I want to point out is, I know people always say, oh, central office. This budget cuts very significantly from central office. So I don't want to hear anyone saying, oh, you need to cut from central. This budget cuts from that. I'm sure there's more stuff we can find later on, but there's evidence in the numbers that there are very significant cuts in central office. So I think it's important to point that out. So I just want to thank Mr. Chairman, you and everyone else for their work. And my hope is that our projections are, I know everything said the breeze, but my hope is that our projections will be as close to what we are presenting as possible, because I think that will allow us to maintain, to Commissioner Elliott's point, to our Chief Financial Officer's point, a healthy fund balance. Not so much for what may happen this year, but to offset things that may come in the 2017-18 budget. Mm-hmm. Wayne Gretzky was a great hockey player, and he said that the reason why he was a great hockey player is because he didn't go to where the puck was. He went to where the puck was going to be. So when you do this budget, you have to think about where it's going to be in 2017-18, and I think that's why a healthy fund balance is important. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Just two things. One is, in front of you at the table is a fact sheet about the OASIS program and what actually has occurred, because I know that there's been much advocacy and talk about it. And I don't know if Adele maybe would just like to take just a minute to quickly summarize the highlights of that.
So as I was listening to you talk about using a scalpel and aligning expenses to the revenues that are coming in through grants, that is exactly the process we followed with OASIS. It is a good program. It will remain a very strong program in the community. We did have to scale back some of the adult programming. So we are sustaining 8 strong adult career and technical programs that are listed in the fact sheet. We did have to scale back on 4 programs. We know those programs are offered in the community. We have multiple providers. We've listed them for you. And we are working in partnership with the community. We're at tables. Keith and I sit at community tables with workforce development providers. We're very involved in the Finger Lakes Economic Workforce Development. We're having these conversations, and we do want to meet the needs of our adult learners. And in this budget, what we did was take that scalpel, and we had to align that program to the grant dollars that funded it. We also had to look at what was being brought in for tuition and make reasonable decisions with that tuition. And with the Youth GED program, we really wanted to be able to offer that in several sites, because we hear our young people say that transportation is an issue. So we do have Youth GED still at OASIS. We're doing Youth GED at All City now. We're adding that site. REOC and other multiple providers have Youth GED, and if you look at locations, they're well positioned around the city so that students anywhere in Rochester can have access to that program. And I'd be happy to answer any other specific questions, but we really did work hard on this fact sheet to try to put as much information there as possible.
Yeah, it's just a follow-up. So I'm reading this just to make sure. Question 15 on your fact sheet. Thank you. So, quote, and this is for everybody who's been sending emails to all of us. There will be no reduction in ESL or TASC courses for adults based on the budget, and continue these courses at multiple locations, right? So we know that. And then there was also a mentoring program at Mary's Place that will continue as well, from my understanding. Is that? St. Mary's Place? No.
No, Mary's Place.
No, it's Mary's Place.
It's called Mary's Place.
Yeah, it's called Mary's Place, yeah, right? So,
Visit there if you haven't been there yet.
right, we're going to continue those tutoring
Named after you.
programs there without any issues? Uh-oh, I'm getting these kind of nods back.
Right. So locations are reviewed every year, and that's what Chip is saying. And so, but Mary's Place has been a strong program.
But the resources are there.
Resources are
and
there, yes.
In all likelihood, with a great amount of possibility, they will stay at Mary's Place?
Yes.
Okay.
There has been,
Yeah, there was a lot of breeze there. So,
these are difficult choices, so there was many people, when they hear things and they get nervous and then things are said, and you just want to stick to the facts of what's really happening.
to that point, I think that's a great point. And sometimes people get this misconception. The problem I have is that sometimes that misconception is driven by our very own staff, right? When they go out and they say, hey, there's going to be cuts to our program, they don't explain it well, they don't fact find, they don't research to find out exactly what's going on. They scare the heck out of folks. We get these emails that are completely wrong, right? With the data in them is completely wrong. And you know it's being driven by staff because you can tell by the tenor of the information that the questions you're getting that it's, you know. So, I think, and this is a word to staff, I think, you have to be very careful. And I understand how important it is because you want to save your program, ergo save your job, and that's all important. But the problem is that when you take some liberty of trying to explain it to people and don't explain it well, you end up scaring the heck out of folks. And that doesn't do anybody a good service in this district when we're in the process of having to, sort of correct these misconceptions. And I think it's it's not a way to transmit information. And again, and I think part of this, and I'm taking some liberty here as chair, but I think part of it is and I think Everton said this a few months ago at one of our finance committee meetings. It's a question about discipline in this district, not with regard to just conduct, but also financial discipline, so that you just don't go along thinking, okay, well, I can order that extra 10 computers because I know somewhere there's a line item that'll cover it, when we know that that is not the case. And what you end up doing some backfilling and the kinds of things that we do. And I think, and I just love that, there's no breeze in this budget. So, again, thank you to you for the work that you're doing. But again, we have to transmit that to the staff, that it's this community's money, we're the shepherd of this money, we're responsible for it, and that we're trying to do the best we can with what resources we do have. And if anybody has that, A, entitlement, B, that ability to be able to say, oh, it'll come from somewhere, then I think they should really consider what their ability is in terms of being able to make those decisions and have somebody else make them for them. And the misconceptions. Okay, that's my...
GC.
There were a number of parents that were on the community task force, and a couple of the recommendations came out of that were the restorative justice as well as some of the other community-based programs. It's getting pretty close there, all right. Okay. In the presentation that was just up, there was about $800,000 in the big picture, 9th grade, the help rooms, the ATS program. Going back through the responses and the questions from the previous rounds, there was a 1.521. Deborah, if you could bring that up from, or who's got it, from round 2, that listed a number of different programs. I believe it was a round 2 response, follow-up from from the first round that had a number of programs and estimates for funding in there. I just want to get a good handle on the as precise as we can the amount of funding that was going toward these initiatives, so I can get back to a couple of the parent groups on exactly what's going into the budget and then what things may still be outstanding. 1.52. So if you could go down just a little bit, we start getting into some quotes for different initiatives. So this was the first one, the restorative initiative. We'd like to know if that's in or out.
That's in, and we actually added 3.0 teachers on assignment, 1 per zone to work with Ruth Turner to do the continued implementation. So it's that plus 3 positions.
Okay. And the next one?
That is not, that's the second step curriculum. That is not in our budget at this point in time. We're hoping to find some external funding. We're looking, begging.
Okay. There's a third one, I believe, below this.
The help zones are at the very bottom of the page.
Okay, and the help zones sound like they're...
That's the 13. We added 13 to what already exists. That does not cover every school in the district, though. Those are those schools that do not have grade 7 and above, and also haven't purchased that through their school improvement grant funds. Do not at this point have them. But we did add 13 new.
And what's the total?
$715,000.
Okay. And that essentially encompassed what had come out of the community task force in terms of the funding that was being looked at to try to get in the budget, correct?
Yes, and I think Dr. Otua may want to speak to the professional development piece for implicit bias that is not listed there but is on our plan.
Yes, what you are looking at right now is the help zones. So we added 13 more to the help zone, so 13 more schools that have 7th graders in them, right? So the PD that we're doing this year is with Dr. DeGru. It will happen on May 16, 17, and 18. So we did not include that into here. That already has been encumbered last year. This school year, not last year, this school year. So we're still working through that budget. That's what we have right now.
Okay, and you said that is included in the budget?
And the budget right now, not the budget coming up next school year, but the budget that we have right now. Okay. And we also have other things. We have the parents also, the students in the schools, working with the schools to make sure that they are listening and hearing what the school is saying about student engagement and how students are being treated in the schools. Okay. That is happening right now.
All right, good. So it sounds like there was a decent portion of funding set aside going forward. Okay.
I could tell you that Linda worked very hard to make sure that she paid attention to our initiative moving forward, that she covered, most of them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One follow-up on that last little bit. So the PD for the DeGroy safe zones, how is that? How are the teachers recruited? They're not connected. Okay, they're not connected. Okay. There are no teachers there.
No. Yeah. What that will happen this year. What we're planning, and I did not bring the name of the workshop we're planning, but it's something cultural racism or something like that. But I have a special name. I think I sent it to you, right?
Yes, you did.
What do you think about that?
I like the name, yeah.
Okay, so I will bring it to the board so you can see the names, and what we plan to do is is build a PD plan based on that name and find somebody that can help us train the teachers, especially the teachers that will be in our schools with the new code of conduct. Yeah, train them in maybe May, June, July, August, somewhere around there.
You can call it boom shakalaka for all I care, as long as it's effective. As long as it is effective, that's all I care about.
If you see the name, you will like the name, and the workshop is built around that name, and I think it's very intriguing to have something like that. Yeah.
So I'll follow. Is it my turn? My turn. So I want to follow up with more specifics. So is that budgeted? Is that PD budgeted?
What we are doing now is looking at our PD. Thankfully, like I said, Superintendent Linda has been doing a great job. So she has returned some of the money from PD area. So that will be budgeted, not only for teachers. I think the RAP and Bente and ASAR, they all need to be trained. So we will make sure that that money is there to make sure. We are working on the budgeting and on the cost for the PD.
Okay, so there were a number of initiatives that were connected to the recommendation around Dr. DeGrew's relational model, including an extended parent engagement and parent leadership program. Mm-hmm. There was also, and I imagine that the professional development workshop or programming that you're referencing is connected to disseminating, and really people in the community task force have heard me raise this concern over and over and over again. The fact that we have had Dr. DeGrew visit the community at least twice before. Mm-hmm. Fantastic work, fully support that. But what I don't support is the investment with then the district not successfully operationalizing and disseminating the work. And so that requires and I've said this, and I'm sorry if it's, if people are hearing me say this over and over, but that requires very systematic planning and, very detailed scoping of resources that are required for the people who are trained. It's a train the trainer model. Mm-hmm. So the people who have been trained and who fill full-time functions throughout the district, accounting for their effort on this. What is their effort? Mm-hmm. What is the value of their effort? How do you cost that out? And then all of the recipients of the professional development and education programs. How do you cost out substitute costs? So I really hope that you have a plan, and I hope you have a spectrum of plans, the Cadillac and the Volvo, that you have these plans so that we can have real impact from this. And then there was also, as I said, the parent leadership, parent engagement program, which would be done through contract. What is the cost of, I've seen some estimates for that cost. Is that budgeted? And I'm just, you don't have to answer all of these right now, but these are all major priorities for the task force work. So I just wanted to pick up on some of the discussion there. What is the staffing model of the help rooms? And in the K through 8 buildings where it is put in, is it available to under 7th graders, or is it only available to the 7th and 8th graders in those buildings?
It's available for everyone in the building.
Okay, and what's the staffing?
The staffing is, we are working with Center for Youth, so they have a staff or two for us, and we then supply a staff to that building.
So all of the help zones, the 13 additional plus the existing ones, those are all Center for Youth or Center for Youth?
A combination. Some of them a combination, but most of them are, yes.
Okay, so the Center for Youth ATS model is a certified teacher plus a behavioral intervention expert.
Okay.
I'm not stating the proper title. So is that?
No, that's okay.
So we will have a full-time certified teacher and a behavior intervention specialist who's highly qualified, and that raises the question of capacity, because those are very special people and very, they have to have certain educational background and, be culturally informed. They have to be ready and capable, and so that's a huge jump. So what is our capacity for that? How are we addressing capacity? And I think it's a wonderful thing, and I thank you for doing it. My critical questions are not meant to, this is what we need and want.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the difference between an alternative to suspension room and a help zone. So the help zone is going to be staffed by one individual who will be mobile, unlike the ATS room. In majority of the schools, we're going to use Center for Youth Services staff who have been trained in restorative practice. And in writing the contract, we're also going to ask for additional training be provided. Some schools already have a staff person identified, like a para who's very connected to the school, and some of those schools will use that individual to manage their help zone.
So you said that they're mobile, so is it a room or is it a staff person?
It's a room. I mean, there's an area, but it's a staff person who does the de-escalation. They also can go into a classroom. Unlike an ATS room, if you don't have a student there, or you might have one student there, you're held to that room all day. So they'll have a student come in, triage, do some coping skills, de-escalation skills, but they will also have the ability to go into a classroom to do mediation, to do circles, and that kind of work.
Okay, I won't dominate any more of the time, but when we come back, are we going to go around a couple times?
Well, one more time, because we still have
We're
to.
coming back.
Okay.
So, one more time, all right, so.
Okay, no questions, just appreciation for all your hard work. I know it was a lot. One comment, though. Going forward, I am still concerned about transportation money and going after the hopes in that area for the reimbursement at lesser mileage. And I would like to hear or sit down or have some presentation on strategic grant initiatives, strategic grant planning at some point, because I think that's well-needed conversation. Thank you.
Mr. President, go ahead, I'll.
Yeah, I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. One question, it doesn't need to be answered right now, but I wondered with this memo about OASIS that pretty much responds to many of the emails that we all have gotten and received. Is there any intention, and again, you don't have to answer this now, Linda, but to distribute it to the affected population within OASIS? I think, to dispel some of the rumors. I don't know if this would be unprecedented, but to maybe distribute this to folks who have been sending us these emails, because I tell you, I've not been able to respond to them all. I know we discussed this at our leadership meeting. It was very helpful then. But I'd ask that you give some thought to maybe thinking about who you might share this with so that they don't continue to, labor under these false sets of rumors. I don't know.
We know for sure we're going to share them with, like, our legislators' offices, because we actually received a letter yesterday from one of them. So our intention after this evening is to send that to them. There are a few, I guess from now on, if people inquire, we could simply attach that.
Well, my concern is what's going to end up happening, those legislators that have received those, that said something to you, probably receiving the same emails that we've been receiving. So in order to nip it in the bud, as Barney Fife used to say, you probably need to get to the source. And so begin to share with the staff members, or even start with Tim Kleiby, members of the affected unions, so that they have an understanding about what the true facts are. And again, it's within your discretion. Maybe even share it with some of the staff members there, because they're going to keep on sending those emails until someone informs them. And you may not be able to stop it altogether, but my suggestion would be this is very informative to us. But I think every board member would like, and legislator that would like their constituency to know what the facts are. And if they decide to keep on sending emails, we can't stop them. But none of us have the time to provide this. I could, attach this as a PDF and send it to everybody who sent it to me. But I think it'd probably be better if it came directly from you all. But whatever you want to do with that, that's just a suggestion. And then Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank Linda, Lauren, Everton. You all have come into this really at the last minute. And, normally we always give thanks at this period, but you all have done something exceptional insofar as you've come in at a very awkward time. in less than 3 or 4 months' time, mastered a budget, mastered the facts, and gotten us to where we have to be statutorily with the balanced budget. And I don't think, on behalf of the board, I can emphasize that enough. That was really a very difficult task. And Everton, I know you don't, you're not out front, but I know you have a very difficult job and very challenging, and you were the sort of the transition to all this, and we appreciate the steadfast nature in which you do your job, and I want you to know that. Christiana and Adele, none of this information happens without you guys. You guys are the vanguards to the instructional and administrative side of this, and these guys have to do that in that context. And, you know, in the past, we've had a disconnect between the instructional side and the finance side, and it looks to us as if you've been able to really work together as a team and come up with an approach that causes, you know, a lot less frustration. And I want you to know, on behalf of the board, we appreciate that as well. And Jose, this I think is your second budget, maybe. You took this over from Willa, who had been doing it for years, and we call it cruise time. He gets stuff done. But it's done in a way that is successful, and that is appreciated too. And finally, we all need to thank Deborah. I thanked her earlier on. She works her butt off in trying to communicate between the board and the staff, and make sure we give them all these questions, and you guys respond to them. So, on behalf of the board, Deborah, again for the second time today, I want to thank you for the good work that you do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd just like to say that for all the people sitting in this room this evening and others from central office who not only gave the first round, but then the second time I interrogated each one as we sat down with their budgets to give more. They've been phenomenal in really trying to look at their budgets and try to see what we could trim at this level so that we weren't going out and looking for positions in the schools. So. They're still looking, and we have more work to do, but they've been extremely helpful, especially since Lauren and I asked for lengthy explanations because we were new to not new to the process necessarily, but new to the information here in Rochester, so it's not the same from place to place. So I appreciate all of their work. Thank you.
And Madam Superintendent, if you recall, we said we needed a prayer. And, you know, it looks like the prayer has been answered, plus the possibility of additional resources coming from New York State. So I just want to acknowledge that he's able, and he'll do it.
Well,
I asked everyone who asked me why I was looking so poorly. So.
I have a process question first. Are we asking about anything and everything, or just what was presented here?
No, we're pretty much cleaning everything up.
Okay, all right.
Anything that's lingering.
Okay, so in the spirit of what does it take to get to yes, I'm just some active listening first. The K-2 curriculum development, it looks like the administration understands its value and is a budget is a moral document, right? We're putting our money where we believe it'll do the most good. And I hear you loud and clear saying that you value the K-2 curriculum work enough to add dollars to it.
May I respond to that? Yes, the answer is yes. And we are meeting with, we're trying to get, I think I mentioned this to you, we're trying to get external funding as well to supplement what we've been able to put into the budget. So we're working on that as well for more of the K-2 professional development piece and for the second step.
Okay. So by external, you mean new grant monies, foundation, REF, or Rochester Community Foundation, or? Okay. All right. The next point was on the restorative practices. A lot of our conversation already around that, but would you say that it is on the funding in this budget is on track for the 3-year implementation we heard about in the Code of Conduct of restorative practices?
I will say that, and maybe Dr. Ochoa would like to say it's what was requested. So with that said, maybe Christiana would like to say more.
Not really. I think everything is on contest to being fulfilled at the end of this year. Yeah, definitely.
So now my big ask. As you know, and I know you appreciate that we're working on the managed choice review with the community. I know that the administration is looking for as much guidance as it can get on this point, and part of it is because we had enormous policy drift. If I could just recap, many years ago, the policy states that we would have a placement office in each zone. And many, many years ago, that was taken apart, dismantled for budget reasons. And I'm not suggesting we go back. We need to look at what the task force recommendations are. When we first implemented this, we did an enormous advertising campaign around kindergarten choice, PSAs, billboards, and since then, the parents that we have now are completely different than the parents we had 17 years ago when we implemented this. And they haven't got a clue what the process is. And there was no sustained effort to reach out to parents. And that's seriously hampering our ability to communicate well with our parents, and is very much part of the problem of why we have so much parent discontent right now at our entry-level grades. I'm not suggesting that we put more into that this year either. Although if we could either divert some Title I dollars to it, it is specifically parent engagement that I'm talking about, so perhaps it qualifies. But again, I'm suggesting that we look at what the recommendations of the managed choice group are come fall, and hopefully the resources will be there then, maybe a new grant. But the real ask is part of the policy requires that we have parent liaisons or homeschool assistants in each of our buildings. And word got to me that at least one of our principals wants to reallocate the FTEs away from their homeschool assistant and to use those dollars for something else. If that's true, the thing is that this policy is already so degraded that this is a hard stop for me. If I were to find that we're willing to give up another piece of the parent of the managed choice policy, namely parent liaisons. I'm sorry, maybe it's the parent engagement policy it's the parent engagement policy that requires the parent liaisons and homeschool assistants. My point being, if we're not going to follow board policy when we're building a budget, when are we going to follow board policy? That's a hard stop no for me if that concept were to go through. I'm not in favor of eliminating the positions for the purpose of another hire. I am not in favor of eliminating a position because it circumvents the progressive discipline process. I'm not in favor of eliminating the position for the sake of balancing the budget, unless we're going to get rid of all of the parent liaisons in all of the buildings. And I don't hear anybody saying that.
Yeah, so I'd like to speak to that. We have been doing a great deal. We've been having many conversations about strengthening the role of the parent liaison and the homeschool assistant. First of all, clarifying it with all groups, with the parent liaisons and homeschool assistants themselves. We've had these conversations with principals, and probably that was said by one principal, but it was just in conversation. That was the honest sharing at that time. We've also had the conversation with assistant principals. We've brought parents into the conversation, and Jerome and I are working to refresh the job descriptions and then build a training plan for maximizing the use of those positions, because we do allocate good resources towards a position in every building. And we do have some incredibly wonderful practices going on. So we've been meeting with the parent liaisons and homeschools assistants several times. We did have a best practice sharing and we had principals and parent liaisons and homeschool assistants sharing together about the highest leverage, highest impact actions that they take as a group. So you can expect to see us, this is our goal, before June comes, to have those job descriptions retooled, refreshed, to train both principals, assistant principals, and parent liaisons together on how to maximize the impact of those positions toward parent engagement. We know we need to do better, and we have resources here, so that is a big focus of ours. So thank you for asking that question so I could clarify it. There is no plan in any building to eliminate that position.
No breeze going through that.
No breeze here, no breeze.
That's going to be the most quoted quote. in this budget.
Right. We're just going to call you Mr. Propolis. Propolis is the substance that bees use to stop up all the holes in their.
All right, we're going to be going to East High next, but is any other burning questions at this point for the staff here before we move on? Burning, absolutely burning kind of question, like, yeah. All right, going down, Mary?
Yes. So continuing the concern and the prioritization of having adequate supports in place to make the code of conduct real, a couple of other points that are of real concern. So part of what we had to do, we had this half-hour policy committee meeting before some of you came in and were wondering what meeting was going on. That was the introduction of the code of conduct as an information item into a multi-week, maybe multi-month process of being adopted. And essential to that, because there are people who are not happy, there are people who are skeptical about the district's history and track record of imposing new policies without the supports to make them authentic and to make them real. And so this is absolutely essential for the success, that the supports to make this an actual success have to be in place. So while I really appreciate the transparency, the budget process has been excellent. It's the step-by-step updating of what we're, subtracting from and adding to. This has been very much appreciated. The detailed explanation and Q&A regarding OASIS, very excellent, very much appreciated. At the end, at this point in time, though, I'm still uncomfortable about the budgeting for the supports that are necessary. So a couple of things. One is an alternative setting for the small number of students who need but don't get access to like day treatment type level programming. That is expensive. It's, as far as I know, it's not budgeted, and there's not a concrete vision for that to be real in this fall. So that's a concern. Another thing is I appreciate the description of the help rooms. One staff person with varying background is better than nothing, but at the same time, it's probably not adequate. We probably need like a Center for Youth ATS, and I'm not saying it should be Center for Youth, but that model of a certified teacher with a behavioral professional, specialist with training, I think that's probably what we need to have universally if we want to see this roll out. Restorative practices, I'm worried if we're doing it district-wide. I guess that's to be seen, and I won't speak to that in terms of like if we're narrowing in on a small subset, which is one vision that I've heard articulated by Dr. Atu and others, is that a small subset will actually get intensive resources and really model it. That's probably good. So I'm concerned that there's not enough resources in the budget to make this real. So I would like to just put out there that I think the Board of Education should be seriously examining itself for savings. I mean, we talk about serious savings from central office, but there's a line of, appropriateness in terms of, the superintendent isn't going to, go in hard on the Board of Education's budget. I think we need to go in hard and look at our own budget. There are three areas. There's the board staff, there's the Auditor General's department, and then there's the Claims Audit Department. So those are three general areas. I really hope that we will examine ourselves and our budget for savings. I also really, and this is my final word, I really, really appreciate that you are protecting the school staffing and that is being kept stable. The reason I voted against the budget last year, and I said this from the podium at the budget time, was because there was prioritization of stabilizing central office functions and central, administrative functions at the expense of stable staffing for schools. So the reverse is true, or at least we're seeing a real prioritization of school staff, so thank you for that. And I look forward to seeing, as you continue to push and try to find more, that we can eke out some more resources to really ensure that these supports are in place. Also, sorry, I said that was one less thing. Looking at the SIG 7 grants, because that could be a source of support, especially for some of these areas. I want to, so are we secure in terms of the supports for the individual schools to apply for those grants? I would like to offer that there are probably resources from within the community task force that would be willing to meet with school-based planning teams and principals and whoever these liaisons are from your staff that are going to be supporting the SIG 7 applications, and really offer expertise, because we have experts. We have, highly qualified experts among that group, and I think we would love to help shape that. So thank you.
So let me say something about the day treatments for.
I don't think that if we cut the Board of Education budget by 50%, there will be enough money to do even half of everything that we would want to do. We could do something symbolic, but I just don't want to leave the illusion on the table that the board somehow has this big budget that we can cut. If you look at it, I think it's like a little over $1 million, our total overall budget. So I just don't see Commissioner Adams cutting. I just don't know.
I didn't say that it would fund everything that we need. I said that everyone else has been.
Yeah, just let me finish, because you spoke, so just let me finish. So I just wanted to say, just in reaction to that, I just don't see that being and Commissioner Cruz can tell you for years, me and Commissioner Cruz took pay cuts, and we did it. It was symbolic. It really wasn't. We did it because it was symbolic. It didn't balance the district's budget, and $1.4 million in board spending won't really do that. In my opinion.
May I clarify my comment?
Yes, ma'am.
I did not say that cutting the board budget in half would balance or suffice for any of the areas that I was speaking to. I said that every area has been subject to scrutiny, and that I think we should be subject to scrutiny as well.
I'm sorry, I don't want to get in the back and forth. I'm not saying you said that. I'm just saying that because sometimes what happens is that if I'm Ms. Smith sitting in the audience, if I'm hearing a commissioner say, well, the board didn't look at cutting their budget, so therefore some things may not be happening because the board is not cutting their budget. Sometimes folks will make that quantum leap because it's something that came out of as a result of commissioners' comments. That's my only point. So I'm not saying that you said that. I just wanted to make clear from my perspective, I don't want people to think that the board somehow has this huge budget that's not being looked at and is causing something that we all may want to see in the budget not happen. That's just the point that I want to leave.
Okay, thank you. Mary, you done?
Yes.
Any other burning questions at this point? All right.
Just
This is like really burning?
Just point of clarification. If there are some things that we're still not clear on, is it okay to submit those?
Yes, I was going to make that comment. Yes.
Okay.
There's still some time to if you have any other questions, please send them. Probably send them. Best way to send them to Deborah. Deborah can then package them and send them over to the staff. So that May 10th is the night for adoption.
Yeah, there's a date we're due.
Yes. So, okay. There's no breezes. Again, I just want to thank, and I don't want to reiterate some of the comments. I think we were very grateful for the work that you've all done. It has not been easy, I think, as President White said, for you to come in midstream and try and figure this out. Just taking the time to figure out where we are and where we needed to go. And to be here today, I think you guys have done a Herculean effort at trying to get this taken care of. And it really speaks to your professional backgrounds, and it speaks to the kinds of things that you were bringing to the table when Dan brought you in. And so, especially for Lauren, for Linda, and for the rest of the staff, the support and all the additional, answers to questions and things like that. This stuff, it doesn't get done by itself. And I'm really happy that we have such an involvement of all the staff in the budget preparation process. And you go through a lot of districts and other organizations, and budget preparation is done by several people in a room. And then it's sort of rolled out to the rest of the staff. But I think you've all had an opportunity to engage in the process. A couple things I wanted to say. These aren't for tonight, but something for us to be thinking about. Deborah did some work on updating staffing ratios versus our student population. And, we should have a conversation about that in terms of how many students we have in this district and why we still maintain a high level of staff and why that is. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be that way. All I'm asking is the question, why is it? And I know that there are some answers to that question. One of them is because we've included so many new support staff that we didn't have before. So there are some answers to that. But I think ultimately, during this next year, and not for the budget process, but for this next year conversation, we should have a conversation because I think people are asking, why is it that we're at 27,000 children, and 10 years ago we were at 37,000, and yet we're still maintaining, staff peak levels, and why that is. And so that's something that we need to look at maybe over this next year. I want to thank you for scrubbing the foundation information for me. I thought it was really enlightening to see how much where the foundation aid really does go, because we think it's just a big wide open pot, but it really isn't. So much of it is already, it's really dictated in terms of what some of the spending is. And the kinds of things we support, overtime and all the administrative supports and all those kinds of things that are so crucial to the district, I thought it was real interesting. And I'd like some more information on how that all, because I saw the chart, but it was hard because it's a PDF, so you really can't play with it, right? But I'd like to have a conversation over this next year about, what's exactly coming out of foundation and why you have so many, what those administrative supports are and why they're broken in so many different categories. It's real hard to take a look at the general picture of it. So that's a conversation we should probably be having in finance as well. Thank you again for OASIS. My only concern with OASIS is like any program that we want to outsource programs to, is we have to make sure that the community has the capacity to accept people, right? It's easy to say, oh yeah, they do it over at REOC and they do it over there, that's fine. But if they don't have the capacity, then we're not doing anybody in service. So we should always be checking to make sure that the community has capacity for when we're sending people out. And then lastly, one big giant takeaway from all this is we have to have the transportation discussion this year. We have to have the hardening of the boundaries discussion this year. The choice discussion has to happen this year. If we're going to look at some additional future savings for the district and what it means. And potentially there could be some good savings there. So we have to have that, and that's going to be one of our agenda items for finance, Deborah, is the beginning of that process. But I think that's a discussion that, we may have to go back to a couple years ago when we had the Transportation Task Force where we assembled a lot of different people and got some good information. So that's another item for our agenda for this coming year. Lastly, just May 10th is our special board meeting for budget adoption. And then our budget then eventually, hopefully, goes to City Council for a hearing on June the 8th. And then on June 14th, Council hopefully adopts the budget. So that's coming in. So again, thank you very much for the work that you've done. And we're going to now transition off to East High School. And you guys are off the hot seat for a while. East High is section 7 in your books.
Okay. rain check on the. We have to take a rain check on the.
Okay, we'll proceed to East High School and the EPO. I want to welcome Dr. Helms. And so you want to start your presentation in terms of the overall, what we're looking at?
We were under the impression we were here to answer questions. We didn't have an actual presentation.
If you can just give us a
overall?
general overall, real brief review of where we are with your budget. And
Absolutely.
Then if anyone has any questions, we can open it up
Yeah,
to
just for the audience, this is I'm sitting with Tim Claskins, who's our business official, and Tim has worked closely with Everton, Lauren, and her team for the budget. What we presented last month. Yes, I'm sorry. This is Tim Claskins. He's our business official, and he's been working closely with Everton and Lauren and their team around the budget to make sure that the numbers align and the monies that will return to the district are consistent. A few highlights of our budget. One of the key components of the EPO is to be as fiscally conservative as possible and to return money to the district. From day one, we have stated that our goal is not to take from the district, but to build capacity within the district and to be as efficient as possible. To that end, under receivership in year one, about $3.5 million has been returned to the district. In year two, that number will be close to $4 million. In addition to that, the budget-to-budget savings, what we projected from last year coming into East and what we actually spent, will bring an additional 1.5 to the district. So in year one, about $5 million will go to the district from either unused dollars from receivership or unused budget-to-budget expenditures. And I can't promise 1.5 next year, but the hope is that we will be able to give similar savings to the district. And when I spoke with Linda and Lauren and others, we agree that however they spend that money is up to the district. Some of it goes directly to East, others can go to other schools. We're not micromanaging that piece. We just are appreciative of what the board agreed to last year and your support for the budget, and in return we want to be as responsible as possible. Numbers for next year for attendance, as those numbers decrease or increase, then we'll adjust the budget accordingly. We also spent this year working with the IT department to get Chromebooks and to enhance the auditorium and some of the sound equipment that was broken, and other aspects throughout the building where there were some serious maintenance that had to be done, and we replaced toilets and water fountains and everything else that had to be done. So we still have some operating budget from this year that we have not spent yet, and again, the same holds true. If we don't spend that money goes back to the district. But we're trying to identify over the next 2 years, while we have these receivership dollars, every operational mechanical need, and try to have that replaced before receivership dollars go away. So you'll see some additional savings based on what we do with our internal audit in terms of operational equipment, and then we'll continue to enhance accordingly.
Okay, any questions, starting with Malik?
The only thing I would ask is, when you all work for a grant, work with, if you want to get additional grants, do you work through the district's grant office, or is that something that you do, that you guys freestyle on your own?
It's both. So we have a person at Warner who does some in-kind work for us. She's actually their grant individual. She does work with our district, with the district, to make sure that we're in alignment and these things can be sustained. We don't want to take on grants that extend beyond the life of the EPO, and then the district is stuck with the outcome of that. So every grant runs through the legal department here. Usually Fatma is the person who's been supporting East under Chuck's watch. And whoever's from the grant department, they look over our grants as well. So we haven't submitted anything without our CSD.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to hear, because I just wanted to make sure that we wouldn't be on, and you answered that perfectly, on the hook for some greatest program, and then they expect the district to pick up the cost after the grant runs out. So thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Elliott?
Yes, I'm always concerned about the salary line. It looks like, if I'm calculating this correctly, that 83% of the funding is for salary, when you include salary compensation and other compensation, if I'm correct about that. And so that's always a concern about me, for me, so that I would hope that over the next year or so that we will determine whether that level of staffing really is needed. Are we having the outcomes in this program that merits the amount of money that's being allocated for the program? So I would like to keep a watch on that. That's 83% of a budget of $22 million, almost $22.5 million. So that'll concern me very much. That if we're paying these higher salaries, that we're not seeing the results.
My only caution there would be we heard the board speak loud and clear about the number of services and consultants that are also in the building. And so we are going through a pretty strict scrutiny test with them and trying to minimize the number of consultants we have in the building so that we can do the work with our internal folks. And so that percent may increase over years in terms of the total budget because the vendor line will go down, and so the consultant line will go down. But I'm definitely in agreement that we can't have a level of staffing that far exceeds the norm in the district and hope that it can be replicated or sustained over time. So you'll see that we have within the presentation last month, we cut staffing by 5%. And so we'll probably have another cut the next year, which equated to about 9 to 10 positions. Some of that would be through attrition, and others will be through not filling vacancies. But we did cut 10 positions, 9 positions from this year to next year. And we'll see that number continue to decline based on, student enrollment and need.
So that's what it is based on student enrollment.
And
so
need.
How do you define?
So need. So when the students take the 6 through 8 assessment and they require AIS services, some staffing is mandated by state to provide the minimum or maximum AIS support. Also, the special ed model that was approved by the state, we did not increase staffing there, but we do provide students more instructional time. So need will be totally based on their performance. As part of the EPO plan, we offer double blocks of English and math for all students, grades 6 through 9. We also offer different support models for students who are off track, which unfortunately are the majority of our students. So the need is just defined by their skill gap as measured by assessment 6 through 8 with state assessments, but then also the credits that they have or have not obtained, grades 9, 12.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There were a number of questions that were submitted in round 3 that had a response that said that their responses would be submitted by Superintendent Sean Nelms, EPO. Have we received those responses yet?
Yes, you have the hard copy in the packet.
Okay.
It's behind the first set of round 3 responses from the district. And so you'll see a divider that says round 3. And on top are the responses from the district as a whole. And then behind that is for the EPO questions.
Okay, and did we get those electronically also?
Yes.
Okay, must have.
And they're also on board.
What's that? Okay. Thanks.
Just following on my earlier sort of focus on student supports, I think you added a Center for Youth ATS program like mid-year.
Yep.
So if you could just speak to your experience and projecting to next year, also with an interest in trying to learn district-wide as well, but speaking to your experience in terms of capacity resources, if someone just sort of say it's someone who's not very informed about all of the complexities and challenges, but just makes a crude statement of, these disruptive students are making it so that, the rest of the kids can't learn, I can't teach, and it's the teacher. How are you responding to the most effective and efficient way to remove those disruptions so that every child can learn?
So I would say it's multifaceted in that we have adopted the restorative practice model throughout the summer. The entire staff was trained. And the idea behind that is to restore relationships among students, staff and students, and then also staff among themselves. And ATS is just another layer in that, towards that path, so towards that end. So if a student has 8 classes and they have a poor relationship with their math teacher, what happens to be in period 3, historically we have suspended the kid from school. And so he misses periods 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all the classes that he or she is doing well in. And so the ATS may be a 1-period intervention where the kid goes to the first and second period class. We intervene to fix the relationship between that teacher and that student over time. It could be 1 day, it could be 2 days, it could be 3 days, never exceeds 5 days. And so that's one way that we use it. You'll see kids go down for targeted interventions because the rate of suspension that we had at East, which officially was 2,600, unofficially probably over 3,000. Kids were being taken out of courses in environments where they actually were being successful. And so the ATS, I think, if done correctly, provides an opportunity to have some flexibility in intervening. Is it the solution for all problems? No. We have students who misbehave all 8 periods, absolutely. But there's a tiered and level support for those students, and out of school suspension should be the top of that tier. At East, it was the first step, or maybe the second step. First step might have been some intervention, but the rate of suspension at East indicated that we needed some type of midway intervention that would not only correct the behavior but restore relationships between, if it's between students or students and staff. And so the ATS room has done that for us thus far. When I was a school chief here, we had ATS rooms at School 45. This was 7 years ago now, I think. And so I also firsthand saw the benefits of the ATS room in that setting. I've also seen, the structure changed over those years. So my experience with ATS has been really positive, but at East it is having an impact, but it is definitely not the solution. And because it was introduced mid-year, we didn't have a chance to really transition the kids and the staff through it. So we're looking forward to having a full year with the same staff and a full year of understanding how to make that program successful.
Yes, I read in one of your responses that there were some folks from U of R who were interested and willing to collaborate with our CSD to transition to internal management. I know we're early, this is still early, but I'm interested in any thoughts that might have been put together about forums or teams or just that process.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of interest. And let me just, some of the in-kind support and some of the work that's been done with the professors, they are all over the place within our CSD. I mean, they're at East, but they have influence everywhere. There are a number of teachers who support through the Noyce Foundation or grant, where we're training math and science teachers throughout the district to be teacher leaders in that area. We have the university is developing a new center for urban education and success, and they have a strong emphasis on culturally relevant education. That's going to be a huge push of ours. Developing starting next year, as we hope to be able to bring that to the district and bring in national speakers and have forums there. There are a host of forums that currently exist that involve our CSD employees, but we want to formalize that structure so that we hit multiple targets in multiple areas. There are often teachers from the RCSD will come to our staff development, and they come into some of the Saturday sessions. So we've been an open campus to whoever wants to attend. We've seen district leaders come over to observe some of the support, but the professors are the ones who are like chomping at the bit to help out as much as they can to the extent practical. You know, they have their own caseload and workload to do, but they're interested in hosting forums for our youth. I believe actually this Saturday is a forum held at the University of Rochester for black males in the city. So again, that's a forum held at the University of Rochester where there's professors who have been involved in that process as well.
Right, so no doubt there's a lot of stuff that's brewing and happening and developing. So just I'd like to make sure we have clear lines of communication and start moving toward formalized sharing of best hits and plans.
Well, I'll say this, to be honest, I know Linda and Chuck Johnson from legal and others have been very open since January to do some of that partnering. They've actually cleared some of the obstacles that were in the way, and to be able to have those open lines. And Chuck, I think Chuck was sitting. Chuck is over here. Thank you, and Linda, thank you. It's been much easier to have those conversations and to offer that support and to get support from them as well since January. So those lines are definitely wide open right now. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
One brief observation that comes, quite frankly, a little bit late. As you all know, along with many of my colleagues, all of my colleagues, were very much preoccupied with our graduation rate. And as I was looking at your data, I noticed that the format didn't, and unless it's late and I just wasn't paying attention, I don't see graduation rate reflected in the format here. And then that made me think, oh, well, geez, let me look at the rest of the thing, and I don't see it in the others. And as my colleagues know, I've been a bit distracted, been traveling quite a bit, so I've not really been paying attention as much as I should. And this is not just a question for you, but Linda, since you're still here, is there some reason why we did not list? I mean, that's clearly we have attendance.
Performance indicator.
Yeah, performance indicator. And in years past, my recollection is we did list it. Do you know?
I was under the impression that it's the same as every year, but if there's something
And I take responsibility for that, because if I had been paying attention, I would have noticed that. But we have attendance, we have suspensions. It's unimaginable that we would not have the graduation rates for each of our schools. And I think in the years past we've had it because the board insisted on it. But that clearly is a misstep here.
We can definitely include that as well to be consistent. I can speak to that now if you want about graduation. Good. So as we know, last year's graduation rate for East was 33%. And I constantly am reminding the community that the graduation rate is a multi-year indicator. And we cleaned our books and did a really intense audit for this year's seniors, started in the summer. And prior to the January assessment, only 19% of the seniors had met graduation targets, many of which were well behind in that target, meeting those targets. And so for seniors, we have restructured the entire master schedule and trying to give them as many supports as possible. But I'll be honest with you, when you have a senior sitting for 6 exams in January, and 4 of the courses they haven't taken since sophomore year, that's a recipe for disaster. And so I would be very happy if we met the target we had the previous year, simply because the credits, you can't fudge the numbers. They are what they are. And so it's really forced us to intensely go back and scrub the numbers for 11th grade students, 10th grade students, and 9th grade students. And it's one of those situations where it defines why we're there. There are some instruction systems that were not in place. It's embarrassing as an educator to kind of discover those things, but it's also a challenge to address them. And I'm confident that the work that we've done in just trying to identify where those gaps are will eventually have an impact on graduation rates. But I do not want to lead the community in thinking that our graduation rates are going to skyrocket after this year, simply because what we inherited when we came in was so low. They were on a pretty steep decline, and we're just trying to put a break on that while also building the foundations for grades 9, 10, and 11. And that's going to be a couple-year process, if we're being honest.
Let me just say, Linda, again, we appreciate all the work that you've done. The reason why I emphasize that is it was in budgets past, and the board is trying to keep our, and if it wasn't, I looked to Deborah, I'm pretty sure I remember it being in there, graduation rates. Yeah, and there, when I looked at East Everton, I didn't see it there, and I said, well, let me see if it's in our other high schools, and it's not. And the reason why, of course, we have that, as we have in years past, it allows us to sort of monitor the progress. It also is in alignment with our leadership meetings where we talk about things like, the number of out-of-school suspensions, attendance, graduation rate. So it's late now, but I just wanted to emphasize it really is an important benchmark for us to be watching through the budget process. And Sean, with respect to, I lost my train of thought. You said something, and I was going to respond to that, but I'm set for now. Thank you.
Okay. My thoughts are hovering around integrated arts in education. And I know that because you didn't have, East High didn't have a 6th grade before this year, it wouldn't have been part of our study on arts integration. But one of the findings was that the most effective grade level for integrating arts was the 6th grade, because that's when kids begin to ask the question why, right, and are able to actually integrate the answer, see in 3 dimensions, and and anticipate outcomes and what have you. Is there anything in this coming year's budget that would specifically target integrating the arts into specifically the 6th grade curriculum, and would you anticipate it actually costing anything more than professional development dollars to do that?
Thanks, Ray. That's a great question. It's actually embedded in our staffing. And so this year, we have band, chorus. We're going to eventually have orchestra embedded in the school day, so that all students who want to take it can take it. And we had at some point about 60 or 70% of our students were involved in one of the 3. We also looked at the Hilton School District, where every middle school child they have to take band or chorus. And in some cases, orchestra. It's part of their curriculum. It's part of their daily schedule. They can do the concert track, or they can do the actual Music in Our Lives track. And most kids take the concert track, where they perform twice a year. And so we're looking at that model as well to see if it can apply to East. But absolutely, I mean, that music and arts is something that we definitely value. The Eastman School of Music has been working with us the entire year in building our music program. And only thing we're going to add this year in our budget is we're going to revamp one of our computer labs to offer music production. And so that students who can write songs or raps and produce them and record them on site. But it's not just a performance piece. They have to understand production, mixing, and how that all works. That's something our students said they wanted to do. A lot of them think they're going to become artists pretty soon, and they may be. But we want to make sure we have the equipment to do that. So we have not just the performance end, but the production end we're looking at. And in fact, Eastman has helped us this weekend. We have our musical, our play, Streetcar Named Desire, Friday and Saturday, I'm sorry. And Eastman was part of that production as well. So we truly believe in arts. We think that it's integral to middle school, to all kids. And we're trying to expand those programs as part of the EPO plan.
East doesn't run the radio program anymore, do they?
No, but we also this year with our operating budget enhanced our equipment to do the video production. So we have a television program where the kids record and they broadcast the weekly news. We just enhanced some cameras and some green screens so we can. It won't be radio, but it will be television and digital media.
I was just wondering if the space that once provided a resource for the functioning of the school radio program might be the space you might choose to use for video and audio production. But that's a little bit of a distraction. The question about integrated arts isn't about augmenting with music and art classes, but rather providing professional development for the teacher to be able to bring art directly into that 6th grade class as part of their lesson development, lesson planning development, assignments, what have you. As I say, might only require a little bit of additional professional development with existing teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give you an example. I was in Atlanta a few months ago, and we visited a charter school down there that a big part of our integration is teaching kids about spoken word and the powers of that. And so it's something that we're going to explore next year at East is embedding spoken word as part of some of our curriculum for grades 6 and 7 to start as a pilot. We did it this year at the high school as well. So we have a group of the librarian and students get together to integrate spoken word into the curriculum because it's something that is popular within the culture. But we're looking at taking that what we saw at the high school this year, coupled with what we experienced in Atlanta, and seeing how we can fold that into the middle school. Now, spoken word is something you have to get. And so the professional development for that is going to be really important. Or getting people in the community who already are experts in it to train our teachers. But the students in Atlanta really responded well to it. And they were using it to talk about the word home and comparing home as a structure, but also home kind of where the heart is, and using the word home to explain gentrification and in New York City. So it's something that I experienced firsthand. It's something that I think we are going to look at implementing in some way at East.
And the only thing I would add, though, is from my anecdotal experience, requiring choir or a musical instrument doesn't always work. I've got one that stayed with the violin from the 2nd grade on up, and another one who, music didn't keep her in school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, I've never been to a quiet church, so the idea, noise is okay with me.
Any other last questions? Regarding East? Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is a different kind of a situation.
Oh, that's great.
Now having to report 2 different school districts, having to come coming through this process, but thank you for putting the time and effort in. And if we have any other questions, we will get them sent to you as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Without any further business, we stand adjourned. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I'll see you all from the screen Thursday.
So you leaving tonight?
I said I'll see you all from the screen.
Cindy, that's what I thought.
You leaving tonight?
Tomorrow morning.